In the vast expanse of the Galactic Council chambers, where 1,000 alien species gathered to mock what they couldn't understand, Princess Zara of Caridian stood alone. Her crystalline skin, once radiant with the glow of fertility that marked her royal bloodline, had turned dull and gray. The whispers followed her everywhere, the barren princess, the failure, the end of an ancient dynasty. But, what the galaxy didn't know was that her supposed curse would become their salvation. What they mistook for weakness was actually evolution. And, the human doctor who refused to give up on her would unlock a secret that would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. Sometimes, the greatest miracles come disguised as the deepest failures. Sometimes, what appears broken is actually being remade into something far more powerful than anyone could imagine. The great crystal spires of Caridian rose like frozen lightning into the purple sky, their surfaces reflecting the twin suns that had blessed this world for millennia. Princess Zara stood at the highest window of the royal palace, watching the crowds gather in the plaza below. Today marked the 3rd anniversary of her diagnosis, and, with it, the beginning of what many called the end of her dynasty. Her reflection in the crystal showed what everyone could see, where once her skin had glowed with the soft blue luminescence that marked fertility in her people, now only dull gray remained. The Caridian royal bloodline had maintained its power for over 10,000 years through one simple biological trait, their ability to sense and nurture life across all species. Queens of Caridian could accelerate healing, enhance crop growth, and even coax new species into existence through their unique bioenergy field. But, Zara's field had gone silent 3 years ago, on her 20th birthday, the very day she was supposed to formally inherit her mother's powers. "Your Highness," came a gentle voice behind her. Zara turned to see her personal assistant, Mira, approaching with obvious reluctance. "The council representatives have arrived. They're waiting in the throne room." Zara nodded, smoothing down her ceremonial robes. The fabric, woven from threads that should have glowed in response to her touch, remained as lifeless as her skin. "How many this time?" 17 species, Princess." The Karathi delegation seems particularly vocal. That was diplomatic speak for aggressive, Zara knew. The Karathi were a warrior race who had only joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago. Their respect for the Caridian crown had always been grudging, held in place only by fear of the royal family's legendary powers. Powers that Zara no longer possessed. The throne room of Caridian was a masterpiece of crystal architecture, its walls carved from a single massive geode discovered in the planet's core. Normally, the presence of the ruling royal would cause the crystals to resonate with harmonic frequencies that could be felt as much as heard. Today, as Zara entered, the silence was deafening. The 17 alien delegations stood in a semicircle before the throne, their various forms creating a bizarre but familiar tapestry. The tall, mantis-like Vorthak with their clicking speech patterns. The floating, jellyfish-like ethereals whose thoughts rippled through the air in visible waves. The heavily armored Karathi, looking like walking fortresses of black metal and red energy. At the center of the group stood Ambassador Crix of the Karathi, his 4 arms crossed over his massive chest, his red eyes glowing with barely contained aggression. Princess Zara of Caridian, his voice boomed through the chamber's translation matrix, "We have come to discuss the future of your world's membership in the Galactic Council." Zara settled into the crystal throne that had been carved for her great-grandmother. The seat should have responded to her presence, warming and adjusting to her body, but it remained cold and unyielding. "I welcome the representatives of the Council to Caridian. Please speak freely." "Freely?" Crix laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Very well. Your bloodline has claimed dominion over lesser species for millennia, justified only by your supposed divine abilities. But, you, Princess, are a fraud. A broken tool claiming the authority of weapons." Murmurs rippled through the other delegations. Some seemed shocked by Crix's bluntness, others nodded in agreement. The ethereal representative, Ambassador Drift, projected a thought pattern of concern mixed with curiosity. "The Karathi delegation speaks harshly," projected Drift's thoughts, visible as swirling blue patterns in the air, but not incorrectly. The royal power of Caridian has been the cornerstone of peace in 3 sectors. If that power is truly gone, then, perhaps it's time for new leadership, completed Ambassador Hiss of the Serpentine Collective, her forked tongue tasting the air for pheromones of fear or deception. Zara felt the familiar weight of shame settling on her shoulders. For 3 years, she had endured these conversations, these barely veiled threats disguised as diplomatic concerns. The worst part was that they weren't wrong. Her inability to access the bioenergy field that had defined her bloodline did put the stability of entire star systems at risk. I understand your concerns, Zara said carefully. But, I would remind you that the power of the Caridian crown has never been solely about biological manipulation. Our people have maintained peace through diplomacy, trade agreements, and mutual respect for, spare us the political theater, Crix interrupted. Your mother could stop wars by healing the wounded from both sides simultaneously. Your grandmother once restored life to a dying star system. You cannot even make a flower bloom. The galaxy has moved beyond the need for weak leadership masquerading as strength. The Vorthak representative, a being whose name translated roughly to sharp mind that cuts truth, clicked forward on his 6 legs. The Korathi speak with the subtlety of a plasma cannon, but their point has merit. 3 trade disputes in the Outer Rim have escalated to violence specifically because both sides knew no royal intervention was possible. 7 species have begun developing bioweapons, knowing there is no one left who can neutralize them at the source. Each word felt like a blade to Zara's heart because each word was true. She had tried everything, meditation techniques passed down through generations, ancient rituals described in texts so old they were carved in stone, even experimental medical treatments that left her weak and nauseated for weeks. Nothing worked. The gift was simply gone. What do you propose? She asked finally. Ambassador Crix smiled, revealing rows of metallic teeth. Abdication. Step down, allow the council to establish a governing committee for this sector. Your people can remain on Caridian, of course, as citizens rather than rulers. And, if I refuse? Then, we will be forced to consider whether a government that cannot govern deserves recognition from the council. The threat was clear. Without council recognition, Caridian would lose its protection from hostile species, its access to galactic trade routes, and its voice in interstellar law. They would become an isolated world, vulnerable to any species strong enough to take what they wanted. Before Zara could respond, the throne room's massive doors opened with a crystalline chime. A figure entered that caused every alien in the room to turn and stare, not because of political importance, but because of how utterly ordinary he appeared. Dr. Marcus Chen was human, one of the youngest species in the galactic community and, certainly one of the most unimpressive physically. He stood barely 6 feet tall, with brown hair already showing signs of gray despite his apparent youth, and wore the simple blue coat of a medical researcher. What made him remarkable was not his appearance, but his reputation. Humans had joined the Galactic Council only 30 years ago, after demonstrating an unusual gift for solving problems that had stumped older, more advanced civilizations for centuries. They called it thinking outside the box, though most aliens found the concept difficult to translate. Dr. Chen had specifically earned recognition for his work in bioenergy field research, successfully treating field disruptions in 17 different species. Your Highness, Dr. Chen said with a slight bow that managed to be respectful without being subservient. I apologize for the interruption, but I believe there may be some information relevant to this discussion. Crix's eyes blazed brighter. Human, this is a closed diplomatic session. Your presence is neither required nor desired. Dr. Chen turned to face the Korathi ambassador with calm eyes. With respect, Ambassador, my research into Princess Zara's condition has yielded some interesting results. Results that might change the nature of this conversation. Zara felt her heart skip. Dr. Chen had been studying her case for 6 months, running tests and scans that went far beyond anything attempted by Caridian's own healers. But, he had given her no indication that he had found anything significant. 3 years of the galaxy's finest experts have found nothing, said Ambassador Hiss. What could one human possibly discover that escaped beings with centuries more experience? Dr. Chen smiled, and Zara was surprised to see genuine excitement in his expression. Sometimes, experience can be a limitation. When you've spent centuries assuming how something works, you stop looking for evidence that you might be wrong. He pulled a small device from his coat, a scanner that Zara recognized from their many sessions together. But, this version looked different, modified with components she didn't recognize. Traditional bioenergy field scanners measure output, how much energy a being projects into their environment. But, Princess Zara's readings have always been anomalous. Not absent, as everyone assumed, but inverted. The alien representatives exchanged confused looks. Even Ambassador Drift's thought patterns showed bewilderment. Explain, demanded Crix. Dr. Chen activated his scanner and aimed it at Zara. Immediately, the device began emitting a soft harmonic tone that seemed to resonate through the crystal walls of the chamber. Standard Caridian bioenergy fields project outward, affecting the environment around them. Princess Zara's field is doing something far more complex, it's folding inward, creating what I can only describe as a bioenergy compression matrix. Zara stared at him in shock. A compression matrix? What does that mean? It means, Your Highness, that your power hasn't disappeared. It's evolving. Instead of pushing energy outward to affect your environment, you're pulling it inward and concentrating it. The amount of bioenergy you're processing right now is roughly equivalent to 1,000 traditional Caridian royals. The throne room fell completely silent. Even the ambient hum of the crystal walls seemed muted. Ambassador Sharp Mind That Cuts Truth clicked forward urgently. If this is accurate, the implications are staggering, Dr. Chen agreed. But, there's more. The compression isn't random. It's following a pattern that suggests your bioenergy field is preparing for something. Building towards some kind of release or transformation. Crix laughed harshly, but Zara could hear uncertainty in the sound. Convenient theories from a human who doubtless hopes to profit from prolonging the princess's rule. Actually, Dr. Chen said mildly, my theories are about to be tested. Because according to my calculations, the compression matrix is approaching critical mass. Within the next few hours, Princess Zara is going to experience what I believe will be the most powerful bioenergy event in recorded galactic history. Zara felt something stirring deep within her, something she had not felt in 3 years. It was like a flower beginning to bloom, or a star preparing to ignite. The sensation was so alien and, yet so familiar that it brought tears to her eyes. How is this possible? She whispered. Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. Because, Your Highness, I believe your bloodline has been quietly evolving for generations. The traditional bioenergy field was just the first stage. What you're experiencing now, this is what your people were always meant to become. The alien ambassadors were beginning to murmur among themselves, their earlier confidence clearly shaken. But, Crix was not so easily dissuaded. Even if this human's wild theories prove accurate, he growled, they change nothing. Power without control is destruction, not leadership. An untested, unprecedented bioenergy event sounds more like a threat than a promise. Before anyone could respond, the crystal walls of the throne room began to resonate with a frequency that made everyone present feel it in their bones. Zara gasped as the sensation within her suddenly intensified, like a dam beginning to crack under enormous pressure. Dr. Chen quickly checked his scanner and, his eyes widened. The matrix is destabilizing faster than I predicted. Princess, I think you need to. His words were cut off as every crystal surface in the room suddenly blazed with brilliant light. But, this wasn't the familiar blue glow of traditional Caridian bioenergy. This light was white, pure and intense as a newborn star. Zara stood from her throne as the power coursed through her, no longer fighting against it but allowing it to flow. For the first time in 3 years, she felt complete. More than complete, she felt as though she was becoming something beyond what she had ever imagined possible. The alien ambassadors shielded their eyes against the growing radiance, but, even through their protective gestures, Zara could see the expressions changing from skepticism to awe to something approaching fear. "This is impossible," Ambassador Hiss breathed, her serpentine form coiling defensively. "No," Dr. Chen said, his voice filled with wonder as he watched his scanner readings climb beyond its measurement capabilities. "This is evolution." The light continued to grow, and Zara felt her consciousness expanding along with it. She could suddenly sense the life force of every being in the room, every plant in the palace gardens, every creature on the planet below. But, more than that, she could feel the potential for life, in barren soil, in dead stars, in the vast empty spaces between galaxies. The compression matrix was releasing its stored energy, but not destroying anything. Instead, it was creating a field of pure potential, ready to nurture life wherever it was directed. As the light began to stabilize, settling into a steady radiance that made the throne room feel like the heart of a living star, Zara looked out at the assembled alien representatives. Their earlier arrogance had evaporated, replaced by the kind of reverence usually reserved for natural phenomena beyond comprehension. "Ambassador Crix," she said, and, her voice now carried harmonics that resonated through the crystal walls, "you spoke of abdication. Do you still believe that would serve the galaxy's interests?" The Korathi warrior, for the first time since Zara had known him, lowered his eyes. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "the council was hasty in our assessment." Dr. Chen stepped forward, his scanner still active, recording everything. "Princess, how do you feel? Are you in control of the field?" Zara smiled, and the light around her pulsed gently in response to her emotions. "For the first time in my life, Dr. Chen, I feel exactly as I'm supposed to be." She looked around the room at the alien faces, seeing not skepticism or ambition, but genuine wonder. The old power of Caridian was about nurturing life as it existed. But, this is about nurturing life as it could exist. About seeing potential where others see emptiness, and making the impossible possible. The transformation was far from over, Zara realized. This was just the beginning of understanding what she had become. But, for the first time in 3 years, she felt hope instead of shame. And, in the back of her mind, she could sense something else stirring, not just on Caridian, but throughout the galaxy. Other bioenergy signatures, previously dormant, beginning to resonate in response to her awakening. The age of the Barren princess was ending. But, what was beginning would change the face of the galaxy forever. 3 days after the awakening in the throne room, the first reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Dr. Chen sat in the palace's observatory, surrounded by holographic displays showing incoming messages from dozens of worlds. Each one told the same impossible story: dormant bioenergy signatures were activating everywhere. Princess Zara floated cross-legged in the center of the room, her body surrounded by a gentle aura of white light that had become her constant companion since the transformation. She no longer needed to touch the ground, her enhanced bioenergy field naturally repelled gravitational forces, allowing her to move with effortless grace through three-dimensional space. "The pattern is becoming clear," Dr. Chen said, manipulating a holographic star map that showed pulsing dots across multiple sectors. Every activation site corresponds to a location where Caridian royal bloodline members lived or visited within the past 1,000 years. Zara opened her eyes, and they now held flecks of the same white radiance that surrounded her. "My ancestors were seeding the galaxy. Unconsciously, I believe. Traditional bioenergy fields leave traces, microscopic alterations in local quantum fields that can persist for centuries. But, your family's energy was different from the beginning. Instead of just affecting existing life, it was preparing environments for something new." A new hologram materialized as an urgent message arrived from the outer rim. The image showed a barren asteroid field that had been dead for millions of years. But, now, crystalline structures were growing between the rocks, creating a network of living geometry that pulsed with familiar bioenergy signatures. "How is this possible?" Zara whispered, studying the impossible garden blooming in the vacuum of space. Because your awakening didn't just unlock your own potential, Dr. Chen explained, his excitement evident despite his attempt at scientific detachment. It sent a resonance wave across every quantum field your ancestors ever touched. You're not just the evolved form of Caridian royalty, you're the activation key for a galactic-scale transformation that's been building for millennia. Before Zara could respond, the observatory doors chimed open. Mira entered, followed by an unexpected guest, Captain Sarah Martinez of the human exploration vessel Breakthrough. The captain was a tall woman with the kind of calm confidence that came from years of deep space exploration, but her usual composure seemed slightly strained. Your Highness, Captain Martinez said with a respectful nod, I need to speak with you and Dr. Chen about what we've discovered in the Veil Nebula. The Veil Nebula was a region of space known for its beautiful but completely lifeless gas clouds. No planets, no asteroids, nothing but swirling cosmic dust illuminated by distant stars. What kind of discovery? Dr. Chen asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. 3 hours ago, our sensors detected massive bioenergy emissions from the nebula's core. When we investigated, Captain Martinez activated her own holographic projector, and the observatory filled with the image of something that defied explanation. Where the Veil Nebula's heart should have held only empty gas, a structure now existed that looked like a cross between a flower and a space station. Crystalline petals the size of continents unfolded around a central core that pulsed with bioenergy. And, throughout the structure, visible through transparent sections, ecosystems were developing at an accelerated rate. It appeared in less than an hour, Captain Martinez continued. Our xenobiologists estimate it's already sustaining roughly 1 million different life forms, most of them species we've never seen before. Zara stared at the image in wonder. It's beautiful. It's also broadcasting, the captain added. A complex signal that seems to be directed toward every star system within a 50 light-year radius. Our linguistics AI thinks it might be some kind of invitation. Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the energy readings displayed alongside the visual. The bioenergy signature is identical to Princess Zara's current field configuration. This isn't a coincidence, this is a direct result of her transformation. But, I didn't create that, Zara protested. I don't even know how I could create something like that. Not consciously, Dr. Chen agreed. But, remember, your bioenergy field is now operating on a galactic scale. Every thought, every emotion, every unconscious desire could potentially manifest in ways we're only beginning to understand. Captain Martinez nodded grimly. Which brings me to the real reason I'm here. The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session. Half the member species are calling this the greatest opportunity in galactic history. The other half are calling it the greatest threat. A chill ran through the observatory despite the warming presence of Zara's bioenergy field. They're afraid of me. They're afraid of change, Dr. Chen corrected. For millions of years, the fundamental laws of biology and physics have remained constant. Life develops slowly, over millions of generations. Energy follows predictable patterns. But, you've just demonstrated that those laws can be rewritten on demand. A new message arrived, this one from the council chambers on the neutral station orbiting Sigma Draconis. The holographic image showed Ambassador Crix, but his earlier aggression had been replaced by something approaching desperation. Princess Zara, his translated voice filled the observatory, the council demands your immediate presence. The situation has become complex. The image shifted to show the council chambers, and Zara gasped. Where once 17 species had gathered, now hundreds of representatives filled the vast space. Beings she had never seen before, wearing technologies that seemed more grown than built, surrounded the traditional diplomatic seating. Who are they? Zara asked. Captain Martinez answered grimly. Species that haven't been seen in the galaxy for thousands of years. Ancient races that supposedly disappeared or transcended physical existence. But, your awakening seems to have called them back. The image focused on one particular group, beings of pure energy wearing bodies made of crystallized light, their forms shifting constantly between geometric patterns and vaguely humanoid shapes. The architects, Dr. Chen breathed. I thought they were legends. So did everyone else, Captain Martinez replied. According to our historical databases, they were the galaxy's first spacefaring civilization. They supposedly evolved beyond the need for physical existence roughly 50,000 years ago. But, here they are, and they seem very interested in Princess Zara. The holographic message continued with Ambassador Crix's voice growing increasingly strained. These architects claim that the princess represents something they've been waiting for. They speak of cycles and patterns that span millions of years. They demand to meet with her directly. Zara felt a flutter of fear in her chest, and the bioenergy field around her pulsed in response. Throughout the palace, crystal formations that had stood dormant for centuries began to resonate softly. What do they want from me? According to their spokesman, if you can call it that, they want to evaluate whether humanity and its allies are ready for what they call the next phase. Captain Martinez paused, clearly uncomfortable with what she had to say next. Princess, they seem to believe that your transformation is just the first step in a much larger process. Something that could fundamentally change the nature of consciousness itself throughout the galaxy. Dr. Chen stood abruptly, pacing to the observatory's great window that looked out over Caridian's crystal cities. This explains everything. The bioenergy compression matrix, the galactic scale resonance field, the spontaneous creation of life-bearing structures. Zara isn't just evolving, she's becoming a catalyst for galactic evolution. But, I don't know how to control any of this, Zara said, and her distress caused several small crystal formations to spontaneously bloom from the observatory floor. What if I make a mistake? What if I accidentally destroy something instead of creating it? Captain Martinez stepped forward, her expression softening with understanding. Princess, I've spent my career exploring unknown regions of space. I've seen the aftermath of civilizations that feared change so much they stagnated until they died out. I've also seen what happens when beings embrace transformation despite the risks. She gestured toward the holographic display showing the living structure in the Veil Nebula. Look at what you've already accomplished. You've created a thriving ecosystem in a place where life should be impossible. You've awakened dormant potentials across dozens of worlds. And you've done it all through instinct and compassion. The captain's right, Dr. Chen added, returning from the window with renewed determination in his voice. Your bioenergy field responds to your emotional state, but it's filtered through your fundamental nature. You're incapable of creating something purely destructive because destruction isn't part of who you are. Zara looked around the observatory, taking in the concerned faces of the humans who had become her closest advisors. 3 months ago, she had been a failure and an embarrassment. Now she was apparently the focal point of galactic transformation, and the thought was overwhelming. What happens if I refuse to meet with these architects? Unknown, Captain Martinez admitted. But, given their apparent power and their long absence from galactic affairs, I suspect they have ways of ensuring the meeting happens regardless of your preferences. As if summoned by her words, the observatory's crystal walls began to resonate with a frequency that none of them had heard before. The sound was harmonious but alien, like music played on instruments that didn't quite exist in normal space. Dr. Chen quickly checked his bioenergy scanner and his eyes widened. Massive energy signature approaching the planet. Configuration unknown, but the power levels are. He paused, double-checking his readings. They're off the scale. Whatever's coming, it's operating on the same energy level as a small star. Through the great window, they could see a point of light growing brighter in Caridian's purple sky. As it approached, the light resolved into a structure that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Crystalline formations twisted through space in impossible patterns, creating a ship, if it could be called that, which appeared to be alive. Architect vessel, Captain Martinez confirmed grimly. They're not waiting for the council meeting. The ship settled into orbit above the palace with no visible means of propulsion, its crystalline form pulsing in rhythm with Zara's own bioenergy field. Then, without any apparent form of transportation, 3 figures materialized in the center of the observatory. The architects were even more alien in person than in the holographic transmission. Their bodies seemed to be made of crystallized thought, shifting between geometric patterns and vaguely recognizable forms. When they moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around them, creating optical distortions that made Zara's eyes water. Princess Zara of Caridian, the central figure, spoke without moving anything that might be called a mouth. Its voice seemed to come from the crystal formations themselves. We are the architects of the threshold. We have waited 50,000 years for this moment. Dr. Chen stepped protectively closer to Zara, his scanner held ready, though it was obviously useless against beings of such power. Who are you? What do you want with her? The lead architect turned its attention to the human, and, for a moment, its crystalline form stabilized into something almost recognizable, an ancient face carved from starlight and possibility. We are the shepherds of galactic evolution, Dr. Chen. Every few million years, a species emerges with the potential to guide the next phase of cosmic development. We have watched civilizations rise and fall, waiting for the indicators that herald the next threshold. What kind of indicators? Zara asked, finding her voice despite her fear. The spontaneous transcendence of biological limitations. The ability to create life from pure thought. The capacity to resonate across galactic distances without technological enhancement. The architect gestured, and the air filled with holographic images showing events across the galaxy. All of which you have demonstrated in the past 72 hours. Captain Martinez frowned. If you've been waiting so long, why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue observing? The second architect, slightly smaller and more geometrically complex than the first, responded. Because the threshold approaches whether we guide it or not. In approximately 1 galactic year, the quantum foundations that support current physical laws will undergo natural fluctuation. Civilizations that have not prepared for this transition will face extinction. Extinction? Dr. Chen repeated. What kind of transition? The boundary between thought and reality will thin, the third architect explained. Consciousness will gain the power to directly reshape matter and energy. Species that have learned to harmonize their mental and biological evolution will thrive. Those that have not will find their thoughts becoming weapons that destroy them. Zara felt a chill of understanding. You're saying that what's happening to me will happen to everyone? To all sufficiently developed species, yes. But, without proper guidance, without examples to follow, the transition will be catastrophic. Imagine every sentient being in the galaxy suddenly, gaining the power to reshape reality through thought alone, but, without the wisdom or control to use that power safely. The implications were staggering. Zara looked around at her human friends, seeing the same realization dawning on their faces. That's why you've been waiting. You needed someone who could demonstrate the transition safely. Precisely. Your bloodline has been unconsciously preparing for this moment for thousands of years. Your bioenergy field evolution is a template, a safe pathway that other species can follow when their own transformation begins. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. You're asking her to become a teacher for the entire galaxy. We are asking her to become what she already is, the bridge between what galactic civilization has been and what it must become to survive. Zara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. When she opened them again, the white radiance that surrounded her had deepened, taking on subtle colors that seemed to reflect her emotional state. What would this teaching involve? Travel, the lead architect replied. Visit the worlds where transformation is beginning. Demonstrate the proper integration of consciousness and bioenergy. Help emerging civilizations understand that evolution is not something to fear, but something to embrace with wisdom. And, if I refuse? The architects exchanged what might have been glances, their crystalline forms rippling with something that could have been concern. Then, in 1 year, when the threshold arrives, billions of beings across the galaxy will face transcendence without guidance. Many will not survive the transition. Those who do may become powers too dangerous for the galaxy to contain. Captain Martinez crossed her arms. That sounds suspiciously like a threat. It is not a threat, Captain Martinez. It is simply the nature of cosmic evolution. The threshold cannot be stopped or delayed. It can only be prepared for. Zara felt the truth of their words resonating through her enhanced senses. Deep in the quantum structure of space itself, she could perceive the approaching changes they described. Reality was indeed preparing for transformation. How long do I have to decide? The first crisis points will manifest within 30 of your days. After that, the pattern of change will be established. If guidance is not provided early in the process, it may become impossible to provide it at all. The architects began to fade, their forms becoming translucent. We will await your decision, Princess Zara. But, remember, you were not given this power by accident. You have become what the galaxy needs, at precisely the moment it needs you. As they disappeared, the observatory fell silent except for the gentle humming of Caridian's crystal formations. Zara floated in her circle of light, contemplating the choice that would determine not just her own future, but the fate of countless civilizations across the galaxy. Dr. Chen was the first to speak. Zara, you don't have to decide this alone. Whatever you choose, humanity will support you. As will Caridian, Captain Martinez added. The question is, what do you think is right? Zara looked out through the great window at her crystalline world, then, up at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, other beings were beginning to experience the same terrifying, wonderful transformation that had changed her life forever. I was afraid of being powerless, she said quietly. Now I'm afraid of having too much power. But, maybe that's exactly why I'm the right person for this. She turned to face her human friends, and they could see the decision forming in her luminous eyes. If the galaxy is about to change whether I help or not, then, I'd rather be part of guiding that change than watch it happen without me. The decision was made. The journey was about to begin. And, across the galaxy, the first stirrings of transformation were already calling out for guidance. The human exploration vessel Breakthrough had been retrofitted with Caridian crystal technology in just 2 weeks, a feat that should have taken months but was accomplished through Zara's newfound abilities. She could accelerate the growth and integration of living crystal matrices simply by focusing her intentions, turning the ship into something between a vessel and a living organism. Dr. Chen stood on the bridge, watching streams of bioenergy data flow across holographic displays as they approached their destination, Torvin Prime, homeworld of the militaristic Korathi Empire. According to reports from the Galactic Council, the planet was experiencing what their scientists called reality fluctuations, areas where the normal laws of physics seemed to be breaking down. Initial scans confirmed the reports, announced Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park, the ship's science officer. We're detecting massive quantum field distortions across the planet's surface. Some regions show elevated consciousness-matter interaction coefficients that are off our measurement scale. Captain Martinez studied the tactical displays with concern. Any signs of the Korathi fleet? Negative. Actually, that's what's strange. Torvin Prime should be protected by at least 50 warships, but we're not detecting any artificial constructs larger than a shuttle. Zara floated near the center of the bridge, her luminous form serving as both navigation beacon and living scanner. Her enhanced perceptions could detect things that even advanced human technology missed. The ships are still there, she said softly. But, they're changing. She gestured toward the main view screen, and her bioenergy field interfaced directly with the ship's sensors. The image shifted, revealing Torvin Prime in a spectrum beyond normal visual light. What they saw defied explanation. The planet's surface was covered with structures that seemed to grow rather than being built. Where Korathi cities had once stood in rigid geometric patterns, organic towers now spiraled into the sky like frozen storms. And, orbiting the planet, the missing warships hung in space, but their metal hulls had been transformed into something resembling enormous flowers made of dark crystal and pulsing energy. By all the stars, Captain Martinez breathed. What happened to them? Dar. Chen's scanners were working frantically to process the readings. The bioenergy signatures suggest that the Korathi have undergone massive physiological changes in the past week. But, the patterns are chaotic. There's no integration, no harmony. It's as if their consciousness expanded faster than their ability to control it. Exactly what the architects warned us about, Zara realized with growing alarm. They're experiencing transformation without guidance. A communication signal crackled through the ship's systems, but the voice that emerged was barely recognizable as Korathi. Where their speech had once been harsh and mechanical, this voice carried harmonic overtones that seemed to resonate with emotional undertones of fear and confusion. Unknown vessel, the voice sang rather than spoke, you approach the nexus of becoming. State your purpose or join the symphony of change. Captain Martinez looked to Zara uncertainly. Princess. Let me speak with them, Zara replied. She interfaced with the communication system, her bioenergy field stabilizing the quantum fluctuations that were distorting the signal. This is Princess Zara of Caridian. I've come to offer assistance. The response came not in words but in a flood of sensory experience that washed over the bridge. Through her enhanced consciousness, Zara suddenly experienced what the Korathi were going through, the terrifying expansion of awareness that allowed them to perceive and manipulate matter at the quantum level, but without the emotional and spiritual development needed to control such power. She saw flashes of their recent history, Korathi warriors discovering they could reshape their armor with thought alone, only to find that the armor began reshaping them in return. Scientists who had tried to study the phenomenon becoming merged with their instruments. Children whose play fighting had accidentally created new forms of matter that their parents couldn't understand or control. They're trapped in their own evolution, Zara whispered, tears flowing down her cheeks as she absorbed their terror and confusion. They have the power of gods but the emotional maturity of frightened children. Dr. Chen monitored her bioenergy readings with concern. Zara, you're taking on too much of their psychic burden. You need to establish barriers or you'll be overwhelmed. But, Zara shook her head. No, this is exactly what I need to understand. The architects were right, transformation without guidance is catastrophic. But, it's not just about power. It's about maintaining your essential self while becoming something greater. She opened a direct bioenergy channel to the planet below, her consciousness expanding to touch the chaotic field of evolving Korathi minds. But, instead of trying to control or reshape their transformation, she simply offered them an example of stability, showing them through her own energy patterns how consciousness could expand without losing coherence. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On the view screen, the wild organic growths covering Torvin Prime began to stabilize, their chaotic spirals settling into more harmonious patterns. The crystalline warships in orbit pulsed with steadier rhythms, and the desperate edge in the Korathi communications began to fade. How? Came the voice from the planet, now recognizable as Ambassador Crix despite its new harmonic complexity. How do you maintain unity while embracing change? By remembering what you were while accepting what you're becoming, Zara replied, her words carrying harmonic overtones of peace and stability. Power without identity is chaos. But, identity without growth is death. You need both. Captain Martinez watched in amazement as the planet below continued to transform, but, now in patterns that seemed deliberate rather than random. It's working. Their bioenergy readings are stabilizing across the planet. But, Dr. Chen's expression remained concerned as he monitored the quantum field fluctuations around their ship. We have another problem. Zara's intervention is creating resonance cascades in the local spacetime matrix. The changes are spreading beyond Torvin Prime. Indeed, space itself around the Korathi homeworld was beginning to shimmer with possibility. Nearby asteroids were spontaneously developing crystalline structures. Gas clouds were organizing into complex patterns that pulsed with their own rhythm. Even the star at the center of the system seemed to be burning with new colors. I can't contain it to just one planet, Zara realized, her voice filled with wonder and concern. The bioenergy field operates on galactic scales. Every intervention creates ripples that affect neighboring systems. Lieutenant Commander Park looked up from her sensor station with excitement. Princess, we're receiving signals from 17 different star systems. All of them report similar transformation events beginning in the past hour. It's like your work here triggered a chain reaction. The implications were staggering. If every act of guidance created cascading effects across multiple systems, then, helping one species through their transformation would simultaneously force dozens of others to begin their own evolution. The architects didn't tell us about this, Captain Martinez observed grimly. Maybe they didn't know, Dr. Chen suggested. Or maybe they did, and that's why they needed someone with Zara's specific capabilities. Someone whose bioenergy field could handle galactic-scale resonance without losing coherence. A new communication signal arrived, this one from Ambassador Crix himself. But, when his image appeared on the view screen, the change in his appearance was shocking. Where once he had been a hulking figure of black metal and red energy, he now appeared as a being of crystallized starlight, his form shifting between solid matter and pure consciousness. Princess Zara, he said, and his voice carried harmonies that suggested vast spaces and ancient wisdom, I owe you an apology. When I questioned your right to rule, I did not understand that you were evolving into something beyond rule, something that guides rather than commands. We're all evolving, Ambassador, Zara replied gently. The question is whether we evolve together or alone. Crix nodded, his crystalline form pulsing with agreement. The Korathi have always prized strength above all else. But, you have shown us that true strength lies in helping others find their own power. We pledge ourselves to assist in your mission. What mission? Captain Martinez asked. Crix's form shifted, and, suddenly, the bridge was filled with a three-dimensional map of the local galactic region. Hundreds of star systems pulsed with different colors, blue for stable, yellow for beginning transformation, red for chaotic evolution. The cascade effect your intervention created has accelerated the timeline, Crix explained. What the architects predicted would take a galactic year is now happening in weeks. 17 systems are in active transformation. 53 more show signs of beginning evolution. And, the pattern is spreading. Dr. Chen studied the map with growing alarm. At this rate, the entire local group will be undergoing simultaneous transformation within a month. Even with Princess Zara's abilities, we can't provide guidance to that many systems. Then, we need to train others to help, Zara said, the solution coming to her with sudden clarity. The bioenergy resonance field works both ways. If I can learn from the experiences of the species I help, then, they can learn to guide others through that same shared connection. She turned to Crix's image with determination. Ambassador, would the Korathi be willing to help guide other species through their transformation? Crix's crystalline form blazed brighter. The Korathi Empire pledges its full resources to this endeavor. We who have experienced the terror of chaotic evolution will ensure that others do not suffer as we did. Captain Martinez began to understand the scope of what Zara was proposing. You're creating a network. Each species you help becomes capable of helping others, spreading the guidance exponentially rather than linearly. Exactly, Zara agreed. But, it means taking risks. I'll have to share more of my bioenergy field with each species, creating deeper connections. And, there's no guarantee that all of them will use their new abilities responsibly. Dr. Chen looked up from his readings with concern. Zara, the energy expenditure for that kind of network would be enormous. Are you certain your bioenergy matrix can handle the load? Before Zara could answer, space around their ship began to shimmer again, and 3 familiar figures materialized on the bridge. The architects had returned, their crystalline forms more agitated than before. Princess Zara, the lead architect, communicated, the acceleration of the timeline was not anticipated. The cascade effect threatens to destabilize the transition process across this entire galactic region. Then, help us, Zara challenged. You have the wisdom of 50,000 years. Surely you can provide more guidance than just warnings. The architects exchanged what might have been glances. Direct intervention by our kind risks contaminating the natural evolution process. But the lead architect paused, its form flickering with uncertainty. There is a precedent. Once before, when our own species faced the threshold, we received assistance from those who had transcended before us. You mean there are others? Beings even more evolved than you? There were. Long ago. They departed for realms beyond our understanding after ensuring our successful transition. But, they left behind certain tools. Artifacts that could amplify the bioenergy field of a properly evolved consciousness. Dr. Chen leaned forward intently. What kind of amplification? Sufficient to establish stable guidance networks across an entire galactic supercluster. But, the artifacts were hidden, and their locations forgotten. We know only that they were placed in regions of space where the consciousness-matter barrier is naturally thin. Zara felt a resonance deep within her bioenergy field, as if something was calling to her across the vastness of space. I can feel them, she whispered. There are 3 artifacts, hidden in places where reality itself is flexible. The second architect stepped forward. If you attempt to retrieve these artifacts without proper preparation, the process could destroy you. Your consciousness would be dispersed across galactic distances. And, if I don't retrieve them, billions of beings will face transformation without adequate guidance, Zara countered. The choice seems clear. Captain Martinez placed a protective hand on Zara's shoulder. There has to be another way. Some middle path that doesn't require you to risk everything. But, even as she spoke, new signals were arriving from across the galaxy. System after system reporting the beginning of transformation events. Species crying out for help as their reality began to reshape itself around their expanding consciousness. There is no middle path, Zara said with quiet determination. Evolution doesn't offer safe choices. It offers necessary ones. She turned to the architects with resolve shining in her luminous eyes. Tell me where to find the first artifact. The lead architect's form pulsed with what might have been admiration. Very well. The nearest lies in the Shattered Realm, a region of space where a previous civilization attempted to force their own transcendence and, instead, broke reality itself. Nothing that enters that region returns unchanged. Then, it's a good thing I'm already changing, Zara replied. Dr. Chen began calculating hyperspace routes while Captain Martinez prepared the ship for what might be their most dangerous mission yet. But, Zara found herself thinking not of the dangers ahead, but of the millions of beings across the galaxy who were counting on her success. The scared, barren princess was truly gone now. In her place stood something new, a being capable of guiding galactic evolution itself. The only question was whether she could grow into that role quickly enough to meet the challenges ahead. As the breakthrough turned toward the Shattered Realm, space around them continued to pulse with the ripples of transformation spreading across the stars. The age of stable reality was ending. The age of conscious evolution had begun. And, at its heart was a young woman who had once been considered a failure, now becoming the most important being in the galaxy. The edge of the Shattered Realm appeared on the breakthrough's view screen like a wound in the fabric of space itself. Reality twisted and folded in patterns that hurt to look at directly, creating a barrier between normal space and whatever lay beyond. The readings from Dr. Chen's instruments made no sense. Matter and energy existed in states that violated fundamental physical laws. Quantum coherence breaks down completely beyond that boundary, Lieutenant Commander Park reported, her voice tight with concern. Our instruments can barely function in the transition zone. Once we cross over, we'll be flying blind. Captain Martinez studied the sensor displays with a frown. How far does the affected region extend? Unknown, Dr. Chen replied. The distortions prevent any deep scanning. We know it's at least several light-years across, but it could be much larger. This was once a thriving star system with 17 inhabited worlds. Now. He gestured toward the view screen, which showed glimpses of what lay beyond the barrier. Fragments of planets drifted in impossible orbits around a star that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Pieces of broken spacetime formed crystalline structures that flickered between existing and not existing. Zara floated near the bridge's center, her bioenergy field pulsing with increasing intensity as they approached the barrier. I can feel it, she said softly. The artifact is in there, but it's not just hidden, it's protected. The civilization that tried to force their transcendence may be gone, but their security measures are still active. What kind of security measures? Captain Martinez asked. Reality itself becomes a test. Only consciousness that can maintain coherence while everything around it becomes fluid can reach the artifact's location. The architects had accompanied them to the shattered realm, their crystalline forms now visible on the bridge as translucent observers. The lead architect communicated with obvious reluctance. The Vorthani were a proud species, convinced they could control their own evolution through technology rather than spiritual development. When the natural threshold approached their region of space, they attempted to trigger it artificially using quantum manipulation devices. What happened? Dr. Chen asked, though his instruments were already providing disturbing hints. They succeeded in triggering the transition, the second architect replied. But, without proper preparation, their consciousness expanded faster than their wisdom could grow. They became gods without understanding, reshaping reality according to their fears and desires rather than their higher nature. The final result was a feedback loop, the third architect continued. Their power turned against itself, creating the spatial distortions you see now. The Vorthani transcended, but into forms of existence that we cannot comprehend or contact. Zara absorbed this information while monitoring the increasing resonance from within the shattered realm. But they hid one of the ancient artifacts before their transformation went wrong. Something that could help other species avoid their fate. The Nexus Core, the lead architect confirmed. A device created by the predecessors, the civilization that guided our own transcendence eons ago. It can amplify bioenergy consciousness across galactic distances while maintaining perfect stability. Captain Martinez made her decision. All right, we're going in. But, we do this carefully. Dr. Chen, what's our best approach? Dr. Chen studied the barrier readings one final time. The quantum distortions are strongest where spacetime is most damaged. But, there are stable corridors, places where the original reality matrix remains intact. If we follow those pathways, we might reach the core without being torn apart by paradox physics, Zara finished. I can navigate us through. My bioenergy field can detect the stable regions. As they approached the barrier, the ship's crystal-enhanced hull began to resonate with harmonic frequencies that seemed to ease their passage through the twisted space. Zara's consciousness expanded to merge with the ship's navigation systems, guiding them along paths that existed in more than 3 dimensions. The transition into the shattered realm was like stepping through a mirror into a world where reflection and reality had traded places. The stars outside became geometric shapes that pulsed with their own intelligence. Gravity flowed in rivers that curved through empty space. The laws of physics became suggestions rather than absolute rules. Incredible, Dr. Chen breathed, watching his instruments display readings that should have been impossible. Matter is behaving like consciousness, and consciousness like matter. The Vorthani didn't just break physical laws, they merged the conceptual categories that define reality. Through the view screen, they could see the remains of Vorthani civilization floating in the chaos. City-sized structures that existed as pure mathematics, their geometric forms shifting through dimensions that normal matter couldn't access. Ships that had become living equations, still functioning but, according to principles that transcended engineering. There, Zara pointed toward a region where the distortion seemed less severe. The Nexus core is in what used to be their capital city. But, the path there goes through. I'm not sure how to describe it. Areas where thought becomes geography. Meaning what, exactly? Captain Martinez asked. Meaning our expectations about reality will literally reshape the space around us. If we believe we're going to fail, that belief becomes a physical obstacle. If we're afraid, that fear manifests as actual dangers. Lieutenant Commander Park looked up from her sensor station with alarm. Princess, we're detecting movement throughout the realm. The Vorthani transformations, whatever they became, they're aware of our presence. Indeed, across the view screen, geometric forms that might once have been beings were converging on their location. But, these entities moved in ways that suggested intelligence far beyond normal consciousness, intelligence that had grown so vast it had become abstract, divorced from any recognizable form of life. They're curious, Zara realized, extending her enhanced perceptions toward the approaching entities. They remember being like us, limited to single bodies, single perspectives. But, they can't understand how we maintain identity while remaining so small. One of the entities approached close enough for detailed observation. It appeared as a shifting mandala of crystalline light, constantly rearranging itself into new patterns of impossible beauty. When it communicated, the message came not as words but, as mathematical equations that somehow conveyed meaning directly to their minds. Small consciousness that maintains boundaries, * the entity projected, * why do you enter the realm of unlimited becoming? Do you seek to join transcend dissolve as we have done, * Zara responded carefully, her bioenergy field translating her thoughts into the mathematical language the entity could understand. We seek the Nexus core to help other species transcend safely, without losing their essential selves as you did. The entity's patterns shifted, and emotions that had no human names rippled through its mathematical structure. * We who were Vorthani remember the pain-joy terror of unlimited expansion. We sought to become gods and became mathematics instead. The core of predecessors waits guards tests in the center place where reality was first broken, * can you help us reach it? Dr. Chen asked. We cannot should not interfere. But, we can warn, the path to the core requires sacrifice transformation choice. Those who would claim its power must prove they can wield it without becoming lost in it, * the entity drifted away, but, others continued to observe from a distance as the breakthrough navigated deeper into the shattered realm. The stable pathways Zara could detect formed a maze through regions where abstract concepts had taken physical form. They passed through a zone where time existed as a flowing river that could be seen from the outside, its currents carrying moments from the Vorthani's history like pieces of broken glass. Another area contained crystallized emotions, literal mountains of joy, valleys of despair, and forests of curiosity that grew like living trees. The Vorthani's consciousness expansion wasn't just uncontrolled, Dr. Chen observed, recording everything his instruments could process. It was completely uninhibited. They allowed every thought, every feeling, every abstract concept to manifest in physical reality. That's why they lost coherence, Zara understood. Consciousness without boundaries becomes chaos. Power without discipline becomes destruction. As they approached the coordinates where the Nexus core waited, the space around them began to stabilize. But, this stability felt different, older, more fundamental. They were entering a region protected by technology from the predecessors, beings so advanced they had successfully guided multiple galactic civilizations through the transcendence process. The Nexus core's location was a sphere of perfectly normal spacetime suspended in the heart of the shattered realm. Within that sphere, an ancient structure waited, not built but grown, its organic architecture suggesting a civilization that had perfectly balanced technology with natural principles. There, Zara breathed, pointing toward a spire at the structure's center. The core is in there. But, there are guardians. Indeed, entities patrolled the protected space, not chaotic Vorthani transformations, but beings of crystallized wisdom that radiated the kind of calm authority that came from eons of experience. These were artificial intelligences left by the predecessors, still faithfully protecting their master's gift to future civilizations. As the breakthrough approached the structure, one of the guardians intercepted them. Unlike the Vorthani entities, this being maintained a coherent form, a graceful figure of living starlight that seemed to embody both infinite knowledge and profound compassion. "Welcome, young seeker," the guardian communicated in perfect galactic standard, though its voice carried harmonics that suggested vast age and experience. "I am Wisdom Keeper Aurelius, last guardian of the Nexus Core. Before you may claim this gift from our creators, you must demonstrate your worthiness." "What kind of demonstration?" Captain Martinez asked. "The Nexus Core amplifies bioenergy consciousness across galactic distances. In the wrong hands, it could impose one being's will upon billions of others. You must prove that Princess Zara seeks to guide rather than dominate, to serve rather than rule." Aurelius gestured, and space around them shifted. Suddenly, the bridge of the breakthrough was filled with holographic projections showing dozens of star systems, all the worlds currently undergoing transformation crises. "Choose," Aurelius commanded. "Save one system perfectly, ensuring their transition succeeds but leaving the others to face transformation alone. Or attempt to help all of them, knowing that spreading your power so thin may result in failures and casualties." Zara stared at the projections, feeling the weight of the choice. Each system represented millions or billions of lives. Choosing to focus on one meant abandoning the others. But, trying to help them all might mean helping none of them adequately. "This isn't a fair test," Dr. Chen protested. "No being should have to make that kind of choice." "Fairness is a luxury that evolution does not provide," Aurelius replied gently. "Leadership requires making impossible decisions with incomplete information. The Nexus Core will give Princess Zara the power to affect galactic civilization. How she uses that power begins with how she approaches this moment." Zara closed her eyes, feeling the bioenergy resonance from all the struggling systems. Each one called to her differently, some in terror, some in confusion, some in desperate hope. The weight of their need threatened to overwhelm her consciousness. But, then, she remembered something the architects had said about evolution offering necessary choices rather than safe ones. And, she remembered the lesson learned from helping the Korathi, that guidance created cascade effects beyond the initial intervention. "I choose neither option you've presented," she said finally, opening her eyes to meet Aurelius's starlight gaze. "Instead, I choose to create a third path." She reached out with her bioenergy field, not to any single system, but to the network of connections that linked them all. Rather than trying to guide each transformation individually, she began weaving a pattern, a template of stable evolution that could propagate itself through bioenergy resonance. "I'll create a self-sustaining guidance matrix," she explained as her power flowed through quantum space. "Each system I help will become capable of helping others. The guidance will spread exponentially, becoming stronger rather than weaker as it reaches more civilizations." Aurelius watched in amazement as Zara's bioenergy field expanded to encompass the holographic projections, creating connections between all the struggling systems. "Unprecedented," the Guardian murmured. "In 10,000 years of testing, no candidate has attempted to redefine the parameters of the test itself." "Evolution isn't about accepting limitations," Zara replied, sweat beading on her forehead from the effort of maintaining such a vast field. "It's about transcending them." The holographic systems began to stabilize as her guidance matrix propagated through the network. But, more importantly, each stabilized system began contributing its own guidance to the others, creating a web of mutual support that strengthened with each new connection. "Remarkable," Aurelius said, and its form blazed brighter with something that might have been joy. "You understand that true power lies not in domination, but in empowerment. The Nexus Core is yours, Princess Zara. May you use it to guide the galaxy safely through the transformation that awaits." The Guardian stepped aside, revealing a chamber where the Nexus Core waited, a sphere of crystallized possibility that seemed to contain the potential for infinite forms of consciousness. As Zara approached it, she felt her bioenergy field resonating with frequencies that spanned galactic distances. The moment her hand touched the core's surface, her consciousness exploded outward to touch every evolving system in the galaxy. But, unlike the chaotic expansion that had destroyed the Vorthani, this growth felt natural, controlled, harmonious. She could sense the network of guidance spreading across the stars, each civilization that learned stable transcendence becoming a beacon for others. The cascade effect she had feared was becoming the solution itself, a self-propagating wave of wisdom that would ensure no species faced evolution alone. But, even as triumph filled her heart, Zara sensed something else stirring in the galactic depths. The transformation she was guiding was not happening in isolation. Something vast and ancient was awakening in response to the wave of evolution spreading across the stars. The final test was yet to come. 3 months after claiming the Nexus core, Princess Zara stood at the center of what had once been the Galactic Council chambers. The space had transformed along with everything else, the rigid geometric architecture replaced by flowing organic structures that pulsed with the combined bioenergy of 1,000 species. Representatives no longer sat in assigned seats but floated freely through the chamber, their evolved forms as diverse as the stars themselves. The guidance network had succeeded beyond all expectations. Across the galaxy, species that had faced chaotic transformation were now thriving in their new evolved states. The Korathi had become living crystalline warriors whose strength came from harmony rather than violence. The Serpentine Collective had evolved into beings of pure wisdom, their consciousness flowing like water through problems that had puzzled scholars for millennia. Even the proud Vorthak had found balance, their precise analytical minds now enhanced with intuitive understanding that bridged logic and emotion. But, success had brought new challenges. Dr. Chen materialized beside Zara, his human form now enhanced with bioenergy fields that allowed him to exist partially in both physical and quantum states. The deep space observatories are reporting massive activity in the galactic core, he said, his expression mixing excitement with concern. Something is responding to our transformation wave. Through the chamber's living walls, Zara could perceive the signals her enhanced senses were detecting from the galaxy's center. For millions of years, that region had been quiet, seemingly empty except for the supermassive black hole that anchored their spiral arm. But, now, energy signatures unlike anything in recorded history were emanating from that ancient darkness. Captain Martinez, now serving as coordinator for the human expeditionary fleets, joined them with urgent news. Zara, we're receiving structured transmissions from the galactic core. The patterns are consistent with the predecessor artifacts we found, but the power levels are. She paused, checking her readings. They're comparable to an entire star cluster. Ambassador Crix approached, his crystalline Korathi form now radiating calm authority rather than aggressive energy. The ancestor echoes speak of the deep guardians, he said, his voice carrying harmonics of ancient memory. Beings who sleep at the galaxy's heart, awakening only when evolution reaches critical thresholds. The architects had also evolved since the transformation began, their crystalline forms now more complex and beautiful than before. The lead architect, its consciousness now spanning multiple dimensions, communicated with obvious awe. In 50,000 years, we never imagined this possibility. The predecessors did not merely transcend, they remained, becoming one with the galactic structure itself. As if summoned by their words, space at the chamber's center began to ripple with energies that made the Nexus core seem like a candle compared to a star. A presence began to manifest, not the partial projection of a single being, but something vast and composite, as if the consciousness of an entire civilization had merged into a single entity. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of geological time and the wisdom of eons. Greetings, children of evolution. We are the collective that was once called the predecessors. We have watched your progress with great interest. The assembled representatives fell silent, even the most evolved among them humbled by the presence of beings who had guided galactic civilization for millions of years. Zara felt her bioenergy field resonating with theirs, recognizing a kinship that transcended species or time. You have accomplished something remarkable, the predecessor entity continued. Not merely your own transformation, but the creation of a self-sustaining evolution matrix that preserves individual identity while enabling collective growth. This was the goal we set when we began our own transcendence, to find a path that others could follow safely. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his scientific curiosity overcoming his awe. You've been here all along. Watching. Why didn't you reveal yourselves before? Because intervention before readiness leads to dependence rather than growth. Each species, each civilization, must find its own path to transcendence. We can provide tools and guidance, but the fundamental choice to evolve must come from within. Zara felt understanding bloom in her consciousness. The tests weren't about proving worthiness to claim power. They were about proving readiness to accept responsibility. Precisely. And you, Princess Zara of Caridian, have demonstrated something we have waited eons to see, the ability to guide evolution without controlling it, to empower others without diminishing yourself. The predecessor entity's form shifted, revealing glimpses of the incredible civilization it represented. Cities that existed as pure thought, spanning light years of space. Beings who had transcended individual existence while maintaining perfect harmony. Technology that worked by convincing reality to cooperate rather than forcing it to obey. Your work has triggered the final phase of galactic evolution, the entity explained. The transformation wave you initiated has awakened dormant potentials not just in current species, but in the quantum structure of space itself. The galaxy is becoming conscious. The implications were staggering. Through her enhanced perceptions, Zara began to sense what the predecessors meant. The bioenergy networks connecting evolved species weren't just communication channels, they were becoming neural pathways in a galactic-scale mind. Stars were beginning to pulse in synchronized patterns. Planetary systems were organizing themselves according to principles that transcended physics. What does that mean for us? Captain Martinez asked. For all the species that are still evolving. It means, the predecessor entity replied, that you are no longer just inhabitants of the galaxy, you are becoming part of its consciousness. Your individual thoughts and dreams will contribute to a collective awareness that spans hundreds of thousands of light years. Some of the assembled representatives reacted with alarm. Ambassador Hiss of the Serpentine Collective, her evolved form now resembling a living constellation, projected concern through her bioenergy field. Will we lose ourselves? Become absorbed into this galactic mind? That choice, the predecessor entity said gently, remains yours. The galactic consciousness will emerge regardless, it is a natural consequence of sufficient evolution density. But, how you relate to it depends on the wisdom and balance you maintain during the process. Zara felt the truth of their words resonating through the Nexus Core's amplified field. Across the galaxy, she could sense the awakening awareness, vast, alien, beautiful, and completely without malice. It was like the breathing of a sleeping giant, or the first thoughts of a newborn god. What do you need from us? She asked. What we have always needed, the entity replied. Wisdom guides for the transition. The galactic consciousness will be shaped by the beings who first connect with it. If that connection is made through fear and conflict, the result will be chaotic. If it is made through wisdom and compassion, the galaxy itself will become a force for peace and growth. The lead architect stepped forward, its crystalline form pulsing with excitement. This is why our guidance led to Princess Zara specifically. Her bioenergy matrix is uniquely suited to serve as a bridge between individual consciousness and galactic awareness. Dr. Chen was rapidly processing the scientific implications. Zara, your consciousness compression matrix, it wasn't just personal evolution. It was preparation for this moment. The ability to maintain individual identity while connecting with vastly larger consciousnesses. Zara nodded, feeling the pattern clicking into place. Every challenge she had faced, every test she had passed, had been preparing her for this ultimate responsibility. How do we begin? The predecessor entity extended what might have been considered hands, though they existed in dimensions beyond normal space. By choosing to serve as the first conscious link between evolved species and galactic awareness. The process will transform you beyond anything you have experienced, but it will also enable you to guide that transformation for others. Will I still be me? You will become more than you, while remaining essentially you. Like a river that joins the ocean without losing its nature. Zara looked around the chamber at the faces of beings she had grown to love, Dr. Chen with his boundless curiosity, Captain Martinez with her steady courage, Ambassador K.